To the June 19th meeting of the Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency Board. I'm delighted that we have all of our regular members with us, not meaning that everybody's regular, but at least they're all regular members. Directors Lee, Davies, and Marble, and I'm Chair Cravoza, delighted to have Don Saylor with us. Yeah, absolutely, as close to regular as possible. Fantastic, and wonderful. We're going to begin, so that serves as our roll call. We're going to begin with an approval of the agenda. General Manager Deemer, I think we want to make sure we add a project update.
Yes,
okay.
Chair Cravoza, we'd like to do a project update after the consent calendar is considered.
Okay, so 1.5 will be our standard project update. Thank you very much for that. Anything further for the agenda from General Manager or any of our members? Okay, could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Marble, seconded by Lee. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We're going to begin with public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to address us on any matter, either on the agenda if you cannot stay, or in general pertaining to our business? Okay. There being none, we'll move forward with the agenda. And we have a presentation, and I'd like to ask Vice Chair Marble to lead this presentation. It's to Doug Baxter for all of his service on the project and to the with us through the City of Woodlands Public Works Department. So, Bill, Doug. We can stage anything that the paparazzi might request.
Doug, this is just really a privilege for me to present this to you. And I'll go in a minute to join with us, get a photo of all of us with you. But you've been with this project ever since it was begun. Prior to the JPA being formed, your ideas have been so instrumental in much of what's taken place with this project. Your engineering background has been invaluable. Your stick-to-itness has been incredible. Your ways of bringing people together have just been great. Your collaboration with Davis. You've just done so many things. I could read the long litany of things you've done here. You'll get to look at it every day and read through it. But just from the bottom of our hearts, we want you to know how very much we appreciate, on behalf of the agency, on behalf of our respective cities, how very much we appreciate the amazing work you've done on this project. You've left a legacy that will be remembered for generations, and you'll be greatly missed, frankly. And we look forward to seeing you certainly at the time of dedication again. It gives us great pleasure on behalf of the Board of Directors and citizens of Woodland and Davis to thank you, Doug, for your dedicated service to the Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency, and we wish you the best in all of your future endeavors. And with that, why don't you
come on up
accept Take the hands for these wonderful people. Now, we know you're doing Facebook now, so we have to give you a picture to post for your grade.
Get a picture.
Did he get it?
When the project started.
Quite as nice as
We need to do one more check here.
Okay, here, okay, let me do one more.
Skip's taking over here.
Wrong place.
Good. All right.
Somehow they stuck him in a different chair than in before.
All right. Agency business here. Item 1 is the consent calendar. Are there any things to pull or discuss on the consent calendar? Okay, I'd ask for
Approval?
Okay. Moved by Marble, Director Marble, seconded by Director Lee. Thank you, Brett. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Consent calendar is approved 4-0. We'll move now to a project update. And Dennis, you'll carry us through this, and floor is yours.
Yeah, we're just in time as the projector is warming up here. I do have a brief update on project activities for you this afternoon. Talk a little bit about recent accomplishments and upcoming milestones. As you'll see, the list is getting shorter as we move our way through some of the permitting and right-of-way acquisitions that we've been talking about for some time, and then I'll just remind the board where we are in terms of schedule and cost. I think as the board knows, and as documented at our board meeting last month, Woodland has finalized now their SRF loan documents, $111 million loan for their share of the regional facilities, as well as a $32 million loan for local facilities. The regional facilities loan is in the agency's name, and that's because the agency owns the facilities, whereas the loan for the local facilities is with Woodland. We're busy working on initial reimbursement claims that should be submitted here in the next couple of weeks, and that'll bring in an initial $27 million for the regional facilities and $9 million for the local facilities. And just by way of reminder, the reimbursement goes all the way back to the expenses that were incurred since the JPA was formed in 2009. So that's why the numbers are quite impressive. And we continue to work on a similar application with the Clean Water SRF for the City of Davis. As reported before, that is what will be a 30-year loan, and the State Board review of that application continues. In terms of grants, we are making very good progress on the federal grants for the joint intake. We've requested an additional $6.4 million, which will be the total, the total 50% match for the federal government. That agreement has been submitted. There's been preliminary meetings with the Bureau, and that's being processed. So we feel very, very confident in the federal dollars coming through for the joint intake project. We continue to pursue the state commitment for the joint intake. We did get $10 million last year. It's proven difficult in this budget climate to obtain the remaining state commitment. We are confident that there's an opportunity to have previously authorized funds under Prop 84 directed to the project, and we're busy working on an application with the Water Conservation Board. It was not possible, we were unsuccessful in getting new dollars put into the FY15 budget, so we're going to continue to pursue previously authorized funds to make up the state's 50% match. On the planning, design, construction side, CH2M Hill continues to deliver project milestones and submittals on time. We've got 100% design submittals for early concrete, yard piping, and if you've been out to the site lately, you'll see they've installed the trailers, and they're getting ready in the next couple of weeks to begin their first concrete pour. They're potholing along the pipeline routes to confirm and identify any interferences in the alignment. As I mentioned, they have continued the early site work and mass excavation at the site, and submittals and requests for information are being processed on a daily basis. Talk just for a minute on the joint intake project. All of the environmental permits have been received for the joint intake. The Reclamation District 2035 issued the notice to proceed on the project, and construction is underway by the construction contractor Balfour Beatty. And if you drive over I-5, you can actually look down. They've cleared the site, and they're driving piles. So that project is under construction. In terms of the regional water project, we have got, as reported previously, our 401 water quality certification from the regional board, and we did receive our 404 permit from the Corps. However, our incidental take permit is still pending. So we've got essentially a full court press on with our environmental consultant, enlisted the assistance of our elected officials, and we're trying to shake that loose. If we can get that done in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I think we'll be fine in terms of avoiding any schedule impact. So that's definitely a priority for us right now. Upcoming activities and milestones in the next 2 to 3 months will obviously continue our efforts on the Clean Water SRF loan for Davis, begin processing reimbursement requests for Woodland, continue our efforts to obtain the state and federal grant funds for the intake project. Utility coordination, still some work to do with WAPA to make sure that we finalize all the agreements to allow the agency and the new intake facility to purchase their power at a wholesale rate from WAPA. We're continuing to work with PG&E regarding the physical infrastructure improvements that are needed both at the intake and the regional water treatment facility. And we continue our efforts to coordinate with the Farm Bureau regarding Road 22 closure. And the board will recall that in the contract with CH2M Hill, there's a provision that that road will be shut down for up to 60 days, and the plan is to have CH2M Hill go in and get those pipelines installed during that outage period. In terms of environmental and permitting, we still have not purchased the mitigation credits for the intake in the regional facilities. The board did authorize that 2 board meetings ago. However, we're still waiting for final approval from Fish and Wildlife on the giant garter snake bank that we're going to purchase the credits from. We are, as I mentioned previously, still need the incidental take permit for our regional facilities, and we're continued coordination with the health department regarding the design review, ultimately leading to the permit to operate. And that's going to be a multi-month process where they continue to review the project, the design criteria, the facilities, and eventually will issue a permit to allow the agency to produce and distribute treated water. Energy efficiency, there was a report in your packet regarding the preliminary determination by Terra Verde, regarding a possible solar project, a PPA, so we'll continue to follow up on that. We have submitted savings by design program applications to PG&E for energy efficiency rebates. We feel confident that we're going to get some rebates because of the high efficiency equipment that is being procured for the project. And then with respect to construction, design and construction of the regional plant and regional pipelines is gearing up, particularly at the treatment plant site. Work on the pipelines will begin in October. Current schedule is to have the actual work on the raw water and treated water pipelines begin around October. And finally, the groundbreaking ceremony for the joint intake. I think all of the board members have been invited to that. That's June 26th at 4 p.m. And there's a ceremony at the site itself and then a reception following at Conaway Ranch. Schedule milestones. The design of the treatment plant and the pipelines will be complete in October. The work on the pipeline, as I mentioned, will begin in October. We are still scheduled to have the regional water treatment plant and the pipelines accepted and complete in June of 2016. So delivering water in June of 2016, which is about 3 months ahead of the contractually required schedule. And then finally, a reminder on the June 2014 costs. These are the same costs that you saw at the April board meeting, $204 million for the regional costs, $110 million for Woodland, and $94 for Davis. Just mentioned that the costs for the different categories have been adjusted slightly to be consistent with the final budget that's being presented later this afternoon, but the total costs remain the same as you saw in April. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Others? Questions on the update? Dennis, going to back to the energy efficiency slide on a 3 or 4 back, I'm actually not going to ask what you think I'm going to ask. But the PG&E rebates, I'm not sure I remember seeing those before. Maybe I just was not attentive enough. Maybe 1 slide back. So is it kind of a, nice little, present or something that we're going to be able to take advantage of?
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing program that
Yeah.
PG&E has. It's a requirement that CH2M Hill apply for that.
Okay.
And because of all of the requirements that we put in the service contract to install energy efficient equipment, it looks like it's going to be a very good fit, and a lot of the equipment that they have to put in per the contract are going to qualify for these rebates.
Wow. So, and we get 100% of that? Yeah?
Yes.
Good. And what's just ballpark it? I mean, if I know we won't hold you to it, Lindsay, but
Couple $100,000.
$200,000? Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you, PG&E. Yeah, okay. Maybe we can put that into a fund or something for, kind of dedicated to energy efficiency or energy projects or something like that. But it'd be interesting to watch that, see how it comes in.
And we're hoping when we do get the final good news, that we have an opportunity to, let others know as well.
Right. Great. That's perfect. So, anything else from folks? Okay. That concludes the project update, and we'll move now down the agenda. Next up would be our 14-15 budget, and Dennis, take us through that. I assume we've got that updated budget. We saw this at our last meeting in draft form.
Correct, and you have at your place in your board packet a very extensive write-up on the budget, exhibits that explain how everything ties together, and we've also provided at your places some larger versions of those attachments for easier reference and viewing. And I'm just going to go through the budget fairly quickly, highlight a few things, and then obviously answer any questions the board may have. So this is the budget that you saw at the April 2014 board meeting. The total was essentially $103,102.9 million. This called the board's attention to the line item DBO, design and construction. You'll see that was projected to be an $89 million expenditure next year, about 86% of the overall budget. The new budget that you have in your packet is $96 million. This goes down about $7 million. And the primary reason for that is, again, the design, build, operate, design, construction line item down. That has been dropped down to $82 million. So the vast majority of the change from 102.9 down to 96 is because of the reduction in the amount of money that we anticipate paying to CH2M Hill next year. It doesn't change the amount of money that we're going to spend over the entire life of the contract. It's just a cash flow issue, and I'll explain it a little bit more in a minute. So the budget is actually reduced $6.4 million from what you saw in April. There's a $675,000 shift between fiscal years in what we were anticipating CH2M Hill, paying CH2M Hill. This latest cash flow projection was based on a revision that CH2M Hill submitted to us on May 30th. The big ticket item really is the $7 million for delayed payment of 10% private financing. Basically, the service contract requires that we withhold 10% retention until the completion of the job. When we submitted the budget to you in April, we hadn't taken that $7 million, that 10% retention out of our payments. There's $97,000 in there for recently identified work activities. I'll explain that a little bit more. And then because of the reduction in the anticipated payments, the contingency was reduced by the corresponding percentage as well. So we've shifted the items on this page from fiscal year 14 into fiscal year 15. $75,000 for design review, $20,000 for equipment and request for information review, the $7 million for the retention, delayed retention, and then $770,000 for delayed payment to PG&E. And originally, we thought we would be making payments to PG&E this fiscal year, this month. Turns out that that is going to carry over to next fiscal year, so we moved the money from last year's budget or from this year's budget into next year's budget. Specific additions and reductions, since we submitted the draft budget to you in April, we've added $26,000 for the agency's participation to the Sacramento River Watershed Sanitary Survey update. This is a regional update that all water agencies have been participating in. It takes place every 5 years, and we participated last time. We had neglected to put the money in for this update that will take place next year. We've added in a little bit more money for management and construction oversight of the joint intake project. We just think it's prudent to make sure that the equipment that their contractor is installing, that is going to be our equipment, that's going to be operated by CH Twilliam Hill, is done right. A lot of interface and coordination on the control systems, et cetera, so a little bit more oversight budget added there. We put in $15,000 for pursuit of supplemental surface water project, supplemental surface water purchase. This is just in light of the drought and what might happen, and so it's more of a placeholder if things get more dire and the agency wanted to start pursuing supplemental water supply. We've got a little bit of money to get that started if needed. And then $19,000 to finalize 3 remaining easements. So I failed to mention in my previous report, we did complete the railroad easement negotiations, so that's all been recorded. We are still working on the Lillard easement, which is the one along the Davis water pipeline, treated water pipeline. And there's 2 minor easements that have come up that relate to the crossing of Willow Slough Bypass. Very, very minor, very small. We think we'll be able to take care of those very quickly. So, but we've added a little bit of money for those 3 remaining property purchases. And then finally, the $160,000 reduction in the contingency, as I mentioned before.
Dennis, could I interrupt? Who do we have to negotiate with on the Willow Slough bypass easements?
It's 2 property owners that we already have easements with that just need to be modified, and Harlan and Heydrich McGinnis. So we have easements with them already. This is essentially an add-on to what we've already got.
So we discovered another piece of land of theirs that we're touching that needs to be added to the agreement?
Yeah, in order to get the pipelines installed, we didn't have quite the easement area that we needed.
Uh-huh.
So we anticipate it's on the order of $1,000 for each of them. So it should be a relatively straightforward transaction.
Okay. While I've interrupted you, though, could you go back to the supplemental water piece and the 15K? I just we're not using water yet. We're not going to be pulling water through the project till the end of 2016. So this is water for the construction of the project, or this is?
Well, this is water that we would eventually put through the project in 2016. It would give us an early start on identifying potential sellers, doing a little analysis on what might be required in the way of paperwork and permits, et cetera.
So somebody's doing hydrology for us to just kind of keep checking demand and capacity and drought and bureau contracts, shifting sands.
And right now, we're not doing any work, and the plan is not to do any work, is to have the money available in the budget should things continue to be dry, and should there be a desire on the board's part next year to get proactive about identifying potential surface water sources. This would be the money to get that started.
Where you'd be doing, potentially at the earliest, you'd be looking at a contract for water for the summer of 17.
Yes.
Something like that. And so this is money to bring on a consultant that is in the know of who's buying and selling on the river.
It's exactly that. who might be selling, and then with each potential seller, the question becomes, well, what is the process that you have to go through in order to actually secure those, that property purchase or that water purchase? And sometimes it's easy, and sometimes it's very complicated, so it'd be an attempt to kind of prioritize where the likely sellers would come from, what would be the preferred sellers, and what the level of effort would be to make it happen.
And then, okay, then what triggers the, if I can ask, what triggers the, that would be a board decision
Yeah.
to decide to go forward there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's the thought, is that it's there. It wouldn't be activated unless we had an update on the water supply situation. It made sense to come forward and begin that effort.
Because I think it depends on the magnitude, obviously, that we're talking about here, but I just want to state for the record that I think that the most obvious, buyer for Woodland ought to be Davis, and the most obvious buyer for Davis ought to be Woodland, right? And the very first thing that we should be looking at, if we think that there's going to be a demand shortage or a supply shortage, is between the two communities, managing back and forth the existing percentages that we got, how we do that, because there's creative things happening on the Woodland side that we should all be excited about, and similarly I think on the Davis side, some of the things that we're doing for demand management. So I hope that that's always the first place our brains go, is how we can work together.
And just to reiterate, I mean, this would be something that would only be pursued, once we came back to the board.
Good.
And had a conversation.
Yeah, good.
Okay. So these are the major budget categories that are identified in the detailed spreadsheet that you have before you. The agency administration includes the general manager, secretary, treasurer, legal, our lobbyist, organizational membership, outreach, and contingency at 10%. That totals $692,000. This is up about just under $30,000 from what we saw in April, and the primary reason for that is we've added that sanitary survey on the Sacramento River, our participation in that survey. Program management's essentially the same. It's up about $10,000. We've added a little bit more money for joint intake management to make sure that the meetings that we get our technical and supervisory and management people to attend with RD 2035 are held on a regular basis. The regional design criteria, $105,000. That's for alternative energy investigations, water quality sampling. The bulk of that is water quality sampling. This is the same that you saw back in April. Water right permits, this is work associated, both the technical work as well as the legal work, revising our water permit to allow for ASR. So the two main components are completing a supplemental environmental impact report next year, and then going through the process at the state board to modify our water right permit to essentially allow for the water that we divert to be stored underground in an ASR project. Environmental and permitting, this is just compliance with making sure we're complying with all our permits, getting the operating permit from the health department, doing some cleanup work on the solids drying bed pond site, and then coordinating with the various regulatory entities and the Farm Bureau. Supplemental water we talked about. This is an investigation of potential water purchase opportunities. Land and right-of-way acquisitions, again, a very small amount of money, but it's to complete the Willard and the two modifications on the Willow Slough bypass. And then design to complete the work with the Whopper Power application and the agency coordination with our energy consultant. Construction, as I mentioned, is the big ticket item. This $91.8 million includes not only the money that we'll be paying to our DBO contractor, but also the payments that we'll be making to RD 2035 for our share of the joint intake project. There is a contingency of $2.67 million, $2.66 million in the budget. It's 5% on all the engineering tasks and 3% on the capital costs. So the recommendation before you this afternoon is to adopt the budget, and then in a subsequent board agenda item to consider approval of the associated consultant contracts.
Okay, questions?
Yeah, Dennis, I don't know. If we adopt the budget, and it relates to, and maybe this is the wrong time, but you can tell me, you'll answer my question later or earlier, and that is, do you see with the passage of the Davis election that they have to go back and recalculate their water rates? Do you see any impact to the cash flow for this next fiscal year that would affect or impact this budget? Where would that occur? And then we pass it. What are the shadows we're looking at? And maybe there are none. Maybe it's all figured out. Just questioning that.
Well,
I don't hear well, so get closer to the mic.
we did an analysis a couple of months ago. We have submitted fourth quarter invoices to both cities for the fourth quarter of this fiscal year, consistent with the budget that's currently in effect. So those fourth quarter invoices will bring in about another $10 million to the agency. If you take what's already in the bank, which is reported in Paul's treasurer's report, plus the additional fourth quarter contributions of $10 million, and then you balance that against what we expect to spend and pay out to CH2M Hill, we'll have enough money to make it to about the end of the year, November timeframe, plus or minus. So the expectation is that prior to that time, the rate issues and situation in Davis is resolved, and we're able to continue with the project and start to collect the additional monies that are going to be required to keep the project going.
So I'll be just a private citizen at that time, and that'll be somebody else's concern. But, I think that's a valid question. So as Davis works through this, they always do. Don't have any question about that. So the kind of November, December timeline is what we need to look at from an agency to be able to continue uninterrupted work.
Yes.
And have them seek out a solution.
And it's always prudent, in my opinion, to have a reasonable reserve for unanticipated or unexpected situations. This is something I'll tell you also that the city managers in both cities are very aware of, and we've had meetings with Paul and with Herb and with Steve before he met, and this is something that we'll continue to work closely with the city managers and Herb and Greg on.
And I'm going to look to my city manager, since he's the treasurer, and ask the same question. Are you comfortable with that timeline as the treasurer of this organization?
I think in general, we're comfortable with the plan. So we're hoping that the plan that's in place on the part of City of Davis can come to fruition, but we're a ways away from having any immediate concerns.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for asking the question, Skip, and getting it out there. Certainly the Davis Council is moving forward forthwith. We were Tuesday evening with adopting new rates, and in the meantime, our old rates, which were certainly at a lower level, now go back into effect. So there's still some revenue coming in, but obviously not.
I just kind of rolled it out there easy. You notice that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. Yeah, very good. Don, you have a question? One. Good. Other questions? Other questions on the budget? Well laid out, as always. Dennis, thank you very much, and to our treasurer, Paul, and all the staff that contributed to this. Could I have a motion to approve the proposed 14-15 budget?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Moved by Davies, seconded by Cravoza. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved 4-0. Thank everybody again. Moving now to item 3 on the agenda. We have really three, but the next one will come up in the next item. We have 3 major task orders that we renew on an annual basis. And so now we consider 2 of those, task order 8 for West Yost for project engineering, and task order 4 for communications with Kim Floyd Communications. Dennis, you want to walk us through these just a little bit?
Yes, Chair Cravoza, board members, You have a very detailed report on CH Twin Hills proposed task order. Table 1 is a presentation of the budget. There's been a careful effort to make sure that the monies that are being requested in task order number 8 for West Yost align with the budget that you just approved, and that the categories and the line items are in agreement. There's an extensive narrative that describes the work that's to be done by West Yost for each of the items, line items that they're going to be participating in. The other thing that I would mention is this is a little different than what we've done in the past. In the past, it's been an annual budget, but since we're at the point in the project where we can now essentially see the end of the engineering work at the end of the project, this task order is intended to carry us through June of 2016. And I would also mention that that's consistent with the way that we have set up our construction management or our quality assurance contract with SOMAS, consistent with the way that the contracts with ESA, our environmental consultant, is set up. So this would, barring any unforeseen circumstances, would carry us all the way through the end of project construction.
Okay. So essentially a 2-year
Yes.
piece. Good. And then anything on the communications task order?
Communications, essentially a continuation of Kim Floyd's services at the current level of effort. Some money in there for her organizing the groundbreaking activities, and also a 2-year budget anticipated to carry us through the next 2 fiscal years.
Okay. Questions from the board? Any public comment? Okay. With that, I'll move the item. We adopt these 2 task orders under item 3 as recommended by staff.
Second.
Moved by Corvoza, seconded by Marble. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We move now to item 4. This is consideration of approval of our contract with Deemer Engineering, which employs one Dennis Deemer, who serves as our general manager. And maybe Richard should take us through this so we get an unbiased presentation.
Good idea.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And just for clarify roles on this matter, as you can see, I've authored the staff report on this item. And on this item, Mr. Deemer's here in his capacity as a representative of Deemer Engineering Incorporated to talk about the possible amendment of the contract between the agency and his firm that provides for general manager and secretarial services, specifically Dennis and Lenan. Dennis and I have been talking about this in recent weeks about a proposed amendment, and you can see in your agenda packet there's a report that explains the background and the purpose of the changes and the proposed hourly rate changes that have been included in the agenda packet. The other significant change in this contract is to revise it to be similar to the other consultant services agreements, where the annual control is going to be driven more by the budget process as opposed to the contract process. And so the proposed contract amendment ties the consultant's annual amounts to the budget, with some exceptions that have been included in the text of the contract because of unknowns when you're dealing with general manager type services. Otherwise, the contract is substantially unchanged from prior contracts that have been provided to you. And on this particular item, as the staff report indicates, there's really I don't want to present it as a recommendation of staff. It's really between Mr. Deemer and his company and the board as to whether and how to amend the contract, but I do approve the contract as to form, and I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Questions from the board? Bill?
I think it'd be appropriate for Dennis to maybe tell us a little bit about rationale here and
Sure.
for the rate requests.
Sure. As Mr. Shanahan indicated, one of the primary request is to increase the hourly rates for myself and for Lenan. The rate of 200, the current rate has been in effect since October of 2011. So what's that, 2.5 years? And similarly, although the rate for Ms. Melhoff has been in effect since June of 2012, the carrying costs, the taxes and workers' comp and those sorts of things have gone up. So it's an attempt to not only increase Lenan's hourly rate, but also to cover some of those increased administrative costs.
Okay. Further questions on this, as to magnitude or timing or anything? Okay. So you're moving both task orders under the item? I'm sorry,
It's just
the
the
consulting
same-
contract for Deemer Engineering. I'm sorry. Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved. 4-0. Now we've got another CEQA amendment, number 7, to the project final EIR. And Dick, why don't you take us through this?
Yes, sir. As the board members know, the EIR for this project was prepared and certified back in 2007, and as the project has gone through more detailed design-related refinements, there's been a series of addenda to the CEQA document. You've previously approved 6 CEQA addenda, and before you this afternoon is CEQA addendum number 7 that's being proposed by agency staff and environmental consultants. This proposed amendment covers 2 project-related changes, refinements. The first project change discussed in the addendum has to do with a minor change in the alignment of the South Davis, of the south end of the Davis treated water pipeline, essentially moving it from one side of Road 102 to the other side of 102, the change primarily being made to reduce impacts on that county road. And the document explains the potential significant effects related to changing that alignment and concludes that there really are no new or different environmental effects as compared to the analysis in 2007. The second proposed change is there's a noise control related mitigation measure in the 2007 EIR that imposes hours of use limitations on the construction contractor for noise control. And as the contractor looks at the project and the schedule and some of the constraints working in tight road alignments and tunneling and whatnot, the contractor has approached the agency and said, gosh, this project could be a lot more more smoothly and efficiently performed if I had some more flexibility on the hours of use. So the agency directed its environmental consultant to take a look at changing the hours to allow essentially more early morning time and more weekend time to allow for construction work to be performed. And another key part of the change is as we approach these very hot summer months, there's some definite worker safety, worker comfort issues related to allowing more early morning hours of construction. So the CEQA addendum also evaluated the potential environmental impacts associated with changing the construction hours and concluded that there's no significant changes as compared to the 2007 document. So what's before you today is a proposed resolution that would, first of all, it would approve the CEQA addendum that's in the packet, and then secondly, it would make some CEQA-related findings, and then thirdly, it would revise the hours of work mitigation measure as outlined in the addendum, and fourthly, it would authorize the general manager to file a CEQA notice of determination. So these are fairly minor changes, but the staff recommends approval. One other thing I should add, for the work that's being performed in the city of Woodland, the city of Woodland has a very specific noise ordinance that has hours of use limitations. Our mitigation measure is consistent with those hours of use. However, the Woodland ordinance allows for someone to approach the city staff and request a variance if you can show that you're not going to have impacts. And so what the mitigation measure would do would be to remove the constraint from the CEQA mitigation measure to make it possible for the contractor to approach the city of Woodland to change the hours of use, construction hours under the city ordinance for that portion of the work being done in the city of Woodland. So those are the proposed changes and the resolutions in the agenda packet, and we recommend approval. If you have any questions.
I'm curious if the county was consulted on this. I mean, we're talking about noise out in the county areas. Is that just viewed as?
Not directly. The county has no specific ordinance governing this type of noise, and the areas in question are largely unpopulated. So no, I don't believe there was direct consultation with the county staff unless someone else is aware.
I do not believe there was, and for the reasons that Dick has mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, I just think there's some houses up along there. I don't know if that's an issue, but
Yep.
up around a little bit above Road 29.
Yeah, actually, we did talk about that, and the plan would be, in those areas where there are neighbors, there would be a personal contact made and discussion.
So how early are we going here? We're going to let them go?
5 a.m., I believe.
I mean, they're farmers. I'm sure they're up then
Yeah.
anyway, so, but.
And there's two major constraints in the pipeline construction that are at issue also. There's we're going to do the full road closure on that east-west road.
22.
Thank you, 22. And it's really important to get that work done very, very quickly to work within the allowable road closure and also to minimize impacts on having that road closed. And secondly, there's some significant tunneling work that's going to be undertaken. And once you start the tunneling work, it's, if at all possible, you really don't want to stop it. You're better off performance-wise to keep going as opposed to stopping and starting and stopping and starting. So that's the other objectives here are to address those construction-related specifics.
Good. Don?
Joe, thanks for bringing this topic up. I'd suggest that we you make a call to the county's building department and just be sure that they're aware of it. And I think they can help you make the contacts with the residents. Some of them may be retired community college administrators who sleep in, I understand, so you may want to.
And our horses get nervous early in the morning.
Right. We'll definitely do that. That's a very good suggestion. Thank you.
Good. Okay, I'll move the item.
Second.
Okay, moved by Cravoza, seconded by Davies. Any public comment? Okay. Okay. Further comments from the board? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Okay, let's move now to item 6. This is consider election of a board chair and vice chair for the year beginning July 1, 2014. So this will be for the 14-15 year. It's my thought that we proceed with the election of the chair, which rotates to the city of Woodland now. But there will be post July 1, presumably 1, but maybe 2 new appointees to the Water Agency Board from Davis. And so I think it'd be appropriate to wait on the election of the vice chair until the next meeting, if that's acceptable to my colleagues.
It's fine. I would nominate my colleague, Dr. Marble, to be the chair and a representative from Woodland, if that's appropriate at this time.
I'd be delighted to second.
Call a question?
Discussion? Public comment? Any Woodlanders nervous about that? Okay.
It is Bill, but we're not going to let him vote.
We made sure we elected you during a Davis meeting because
There you
we were nervous that this could have a little ruckus. Okay, no public comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0. Bill, congratulations on assuming the chairmanship again. Delighted to have you back. Correspondence. Dennis, would you like to take us through a couple pieces of correspondence you've added to our packet? I'm sorry, long-range calendar.
Yeah, just for your information, item 7 is the long-range calendar. You'll see that there's not a lot of time-sensitive items on our July calendar. We have a recess planned in August. I would say you know, something perhaps related to the, some of the permitting that might require board attention, and/or some good news on the Davis SRF loan could prompt us to call for a meeting. But I think there's a very good chance that the July meeting, at least at this point, would not be something that we would need.
And just as a reminder, because we will not have a vice chair, and I'm at a League of California Cities directors meeting out of town that day, so I would not be available. And I think that's indicated on the long-range calendar that one director had a conflict. That's me. So if a meeting becomes necessary, what then?
Well, we'd have to call for a special meeting. We'd have to poll the board and identify dates that would work for a
Okay.
majority of the board.
Okay.
And I just, you know, to make sure, clarify the board's intent with respect to the Davis representatives, my understanding would be then that in the interim, until Davis has a opportunity to consider it at their council, that the current members, Director Lee and the alternate Dan Wolk would serve.
I think that's absolutely the case, right?
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. And Skip, this will be your final meeting as well, right? Yeah. So it would be Hilliard and Marble for Woodland, you know, until there's another formal alternate or regular member appointed for Woodland.
Is the 17th of July no longer a meeting date? Is that what?
I think that's what we're hearing right now. The assumption is there will not be a meeting on the 17th.
Correct.
Unless some urgent item came up. And then there would not be one in August, so the next meeting would be scheduled for September 18th. And again, and that would be Davis, or that would be Woodland? I guess we'd come.
We would alternate. The way we've been doing it is to go to Woodland.
Yeah, go to Woodland. So right now it shows as Davis, but presumably if we don't meet in July, then the September meeting would be Woodland.
And I would anticipate if we did have a need to meet between now and September, that it would be a fairly targeted, short agenda just to deal with the time-sensitive items.
Okay.
Very good.
Bill? Okay. All right. We don't require action on this, right?
Just for the
Nope.
board's information.
Good. All right.
Could I go back to item 5, just maybe some instructions to staff?
Sure. The CEQA amendment?
Yeah, so the way I read it was that it is not that necessarily the time of construction would increase in terms of the hours, but there would be the flexibility should the contractor wish to expand the hours. So it's not that they will necessarily begin at 5 a.m., but should they have a reason to start earlier or go later or work more on Saturday or Sunday.
Generally, that's true, Director Lee. I guess the two clarifications would be the work relay on Road 24, where they do want the flexibility to work longer hours to get that work done as quickly as possible and minimize the closure. And then also the ability when they're drilling, as Dick was explaining, they want to make sure that they don't have to stop the drilling operation and get the boring head stuck. And so depending on how that's going, they may want to just keep going beyond an 8 or 10-hour day to make sure they get that done effectively.
So outside of that, I mean, this does open it up, and I guess I'm comfortable with that, but I think in terms of outreach to neighbors, if there are neighbors in that area, that we proactively reach out to them, that the potential hours have expanded, and then perhaps if the contractor wishes to move forward, that they're given a heads up. So not just, oh, by the way, Saturday morning at 5 a.m. we might be making extra noise sometime in the next 0 to 18 months. But if the contractor says, yes, we're actually planning on starting earlier, perhaps a week in advance. And I'm not trying to constrain the contractor too much, but at least so the neighbors have a heads up what's happening and what the expected duration is.
Sure.
Because the way it reads is it does sort of just open it up in general, which is fine and understandable, but for their sake, it might be a nice courtesy.
Absolutely, and that's something that has been discussed with the contractor, but we'll make sure that they know that it's also a board priority and that we have a specific plan for notifying the neighbors before any extended work takes place.
Thank you for that, Brett, very much. I think 90% of these issues can be resolved with Thursday morning. You will be awoken early, and I think actually, some of this too, we get problems just because people don't know what's going on. And, I'm assuming this construction is going to be, noticeable for miles, once they start drilling a tunnel and doing jackhammers and stuff like that. So, good, great. We don't want Supervisor Saylor to be, or is this Jim's district? If it's Jim's district, we're not really worried about it.
Yeah, start early.
Yeah, start early, okay, good. No need for public notice.
But I will
We're good.
give you
Okay.
a phone number for concerns and complaints.
Yeah, that'd be my home number, apparently. The chair at the time of the waiver of the constraint was Gravosa. Very good. Okay, let's see, correspondence. Dennis, do you want to?
Yeah, there's just two items.
Right.
One is a letter that was sent by Pablo Arayev at the Bureau to his counterpart, John Laird, at the state, and just a very good example of how, the Bureau is helping us in terms of securing the state funds. And then the other item in the packet is just a letter that documents the SRF loan for Woodland. It's a significant milestone.
Tremendous. Technical Advisory Committee comments?
City of Woodland is real excited to report that our above-ground tank should be online within the next 2 weeks. This is, while it's directly tied to the surface water project, it's a very timely introduction of 3 million gallons of storage and 6,000 gallons per minute of pumping capacity into our water system. And so we're really looking forward to that. And that's all I have to report.
Fantastic. Congratulations. We look forward to the art opening on the side of that tank. All right. Let's see. Board member comments? Anybody?
If I could just real quick, you commented on the quality of the budget document, and I just want to acknowledge the work of the team members from the two cities, Diane Phillips and Tim Bush, and also West Yost, who really did a lot of work putting this together, and Lindsay Smith, who's here, had a key part of that. So it's a real team effort, and I think we feel very good. The agency feels very good that we've got a real solid, well-documented budget to work from.
Great. Thank you, Dennis, very much. Board member comments? Buddy? Good?
I do. This is the last meeting of two mayors, two city mayors who've been absolutely essential, really, to the progress of this agency, which we all know represents the largest single infrastructure project either of our two cities has undertaken. I think it's appropriate to recognize the work that both of you have done, and I just want to say a couple things about each of you, and then got a little, it's a plaque of sorts, but it's a picture that I think you will each enjoy treasuring a great deal. But Joe, you joined the agency shortly after your election to the Davis City Council in 2010. The agency had been in existence for a year, and you were here lending your legal knowledge, your background in water issues to some very critical negotiations that we undertook. And your leadership, I think, has just been incredible. You've helped us through some difficult issues with your city, and helped us get to the point with all the accomplishments that the agency has had, really, which you're very familiar with those accomplishments, and each and every one. I mean, we could enumerate them. I'm just delighted that you've been such a such a supportive person on this board and so very helpful with your expertise. And so want to just express that appreciation. I think it would be appreciation we would all express to you. And Skip, as the mayor of Woodland, you've it's been an incredibly important time in the issues that have come up with this agency, which many of which were unanticipated, and we've had to work through each of those issues. And having you there to meet with Conway at the appropriate times, to assist with funding issues, with people you knew in the legislature, all of those things have just been incredibly important. And your leadership really, and your standing in Woodland, I'm sure just as Joe's standing in Davis, your standing in Woodland among the people has been critical to Woodland accepting this project, to Woodland accepting the rates, and you've just been a constant advocate for what we've done in this agency, and you are two incredibly good friends, and I just appreciate very much and express, I think, on behalf of all of us and staff here, that this has been a very unique board, really. And what we've done, I think, is not just historical for our region, but it's historical in the state. And you've been great people to work with. And so we've got a little plaque here, Joe. This is yours, and you can hold it up so everybody can take a look. I'll hold it up. This is a picture at the groundbreaking. There's these two in their best poses ever. I think we'll all come down or stay up here or whatever in a minute to get a picture, but thank you. I just want to express our appreciation. Concludes my comments, Mr. Mayor and Chair.
Skip, anything to?
Been an enjoyable ride, and look forward to drinking the water.
Good. And I'll just say the same, just tremendous experience.
Is staff allowed to?
Sure.
You know, I've got to say how much I've appreciated this board from a staff perspective. I've worked with a lot of boards and a lot of councils and had to go through a lot of political ins and outs to get stuff done, but this board has been solid, rock solid all the way through, and I just wanted you to know that I appreciate what you've done and what you've brought, your expertise, the quality, your personality, what you've brought. You've brought the two communities together to put this together. And so from a staff perspective, we thank you very much. You've helped us get our job done.
Good. Yeah, thank you, Greg, so much. Dennis and Dick, good. Anybody else? Okay, we're adjourned.
We need to get a picture, but we can do that after.
We'll do that after. Good.